Welcome to the sofa.
Emma, thank you for having me on the sofa.
Underneath the tree, at the edge of the fairy tale stage.
I feel like I'm at an opera.
Could well be. If we stay here long enough, maybe it'll start. We just saw an awesome talk. It was both fun to watch, but it was also delightful to watch the audience be like,
I hope that was the effect that had. I'm
so
never sure. Sometimes you encounter a hostile audience. I think they were
they're
good
a friendly
though.
crowd. Friday evening,
Yeah.
had 2 good days of great talks.
All the hostile people already left. It's the
yeah,
last
exactly.
talk.
I'm off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They would.
I gotta leave.
They wouldn't stick around.
But for anyone watching this at home, or maybe the younger developers, maybe still trying to get their head around JavaScript, it's also kind of been inspired watching this, having maybe read a little about you, following your kind of blog, or kind of looking at what's there, saying how on earth did he manage to make the choices that got him there?
Oh.
Is there like 1 or 2 kind of decisions that you remember looking back and being like, I'm so happy that I made that pathway?
Yeah.
With hindsight.
My career was very unintentional.
Yeah.
Very, very unintentional. I actually, when I was a kid, I went to the library. I checked out a book on BASIC, like really old school BASIC, like pre-Visual Basic. But to be honest with you, I grew up in a very small town. There was no one to help me, and so I just thought I wasn't smart enough to be a programmer. So I completely
because
shelved
this book
it.
was like
The BASIC was fine, but then I was like, I want to make a graphical app, a user interface app, and it was like, okay, well, buy these 6 books on the Mac Toolbox C
come back
API,
next year.
and I was like, yeah, there's no pointers. No, I'm sorry. But I kind of always dabbled with it, played around with it in the back of my pocket, and I think the cool thing about programming is, even if you dabble in it and you're just kind of playing around with it, if you're in an industry where that's not really prevalent, like if you're a dentist and you can know how to program, that actually is a huge advantage over all the other dentists, because you can start automating all the stuff that you did by hand. So that's actually what I did. I was working.
Became a dentist.
No, yeah, I did. You can tell. Well, at least I've had a lot of work. No, I was working at Genius Bar at an Apple store, and we would repair computers and iPods and stuff, and so I just wrote a little piece of software that would automate a lot of that process. Anyway, I just kind of went from there. Yeah. And just, I guess, put yourself in a position to always be playing around with it, because eventually there's so much demand. Yeah.
Keep playing and you'll find your kind of niche where it fits.
Yeah, where your skill set are. You don't actually have to be smart to be a programmer. I guess that's the lesson.
Tell anybody outside the building.
You really don't deserve these salaries, that's for sure.
There's been a lot of talk across the whole conference about open source, as there rightly should be. From your position or your kind of perspective, do you see anything that is a big threat that you're like, this is the biggest thing that's going to threaten the open source movement?
I don't feel like there is a threat to open source. Yeah. I feel like that's pretty well established. Yeah. I think there are improvements we can make. But I would say the biggest threat to me is not to open source, but to the open web.
Okay. Yeah.
Because I think especially on mobile devices, you have these entirely new platforms being created, and customers demand really great. I mean, the iPhone, iOS set the bar. You have to have animations, you have to have smooth transitions, you have to have offline support. iPhone somehow got everything right, excuse me, out of the box. Yeah. Yeah. And so while the web, I think, is largely won on the desktop for the vast majority of users. Yeah. On the mobile devices, the web is, I don't want to say losing, but it's definitely not winning.
Yeah, it's not the uniform in the same way.
Right. Yeah. And so I think the question is, will we be able to catch up? Will the mobile browser be able to catch up? And I think the answer is yes. Yeah. I think as the hardware catches up, as the capabilities of the platform, once we figure out what do we need to make really great experiences on the mobile web, I think eventually, the web is always going to be playing a catch-up game, but that's fine in the scheme of things. The web is such a transformative thing that if it takes 3 years to show up, honestly, it's fine. Yeah. But it requires a lot of fighting, and I think that's the thing that was most surprising to me. I guess growing up, I just took the web for granted, and I didn't realize how many people there are, independent people working in organizations like Mozilla, who go to work and they fight hard to make sure that the web remains an open place.
Yeah, but it's not just a by chance kind of accident that
no,
happens to be an
but
open
behind the
place.
scenes, there are really fierce fights that happen. Yeah. And so I guess the thing I would encourage people to do is, if
keep fighting that fight.
Yeah, if you care, or at least support the people who are fighting that fight, because it's not easy. It definitely takes a lot out of you.
Good insight and advice. I think a lot of people take that for granted. Yeah. The industry we work in changes so fast. I mean, you must have seen it
Yeah,
many, many times.
absolutely.
Are there things that you learnt or skills that you used that 5 years ago you're like, yes, this is it, that in probably 2 years are going to be redundant?
Oh, well, you know, that's actually a tricky question because I got very lucky in that I started my career with JavaScript.
Ah,
Like like my first real
out of the
programming job.
cradle.
Yeah, it was a huge advantage to me because, like I
Yeah.
said, I'm not a very smart person. I just happened to be in the right place at the right time. Where I started getting into writing client-side JavaScript in 2009, which is,
Okay.
oh my God, 5 years ago.
Yep.
And at the time, no one was taking JavaScript seriously because V8 was still kind of not where it is today. And Mozilla's JavaScript engine, Microsoft JavaScript engine were still quite slow. So I was forged in the crucible of building client-side apps, and so I just kind of been riding that wave. I don't know what I'm going to do when JavaScript's gone, man. My career is basically over.
You better start thinking about what's next.
Yeah, I'm going to have to learn like VR, WebGL or something. I don't know what the next thing is, but I definitely I gotta pivot here soon. It's getting a little
Speak
saturated.
to Doug and see if you can come up with something. One last question.
Sure.
You were given a magic wand and you can change anything about your cradle language, JavaScript. What would you change if you could change anything about
Okay,
JavaScript?
so this one's really esoteric, maybe.
Yeah.
But if I could change one thing about JavaScript that I know is not in the cards for ES6 and ES7, which are the two next versions.
Yep.
The biggest thing for me actually is that I would want a block syntax like Ruby in addition to just a Lambda syntax, which we have right now.
That sounds like you've thought about this before.
Well, I know that's a very weirdly specific thing. Actually, my co-founder and good friend, Yehuda Katz, he wrote a blog post. So he's on
Okay.
TC39.
Okay.
He's on TC39, so I know he has advocated this in person, and he wrote a really stellar blog post that you can I'm sure if you Google
Yeah.
Yehuda Katz JavaScript blocks,
there.
it'll be the first hit. But he did, I think, a very good job of articulating why you really want Ruby-like block syntax. There
Yeah.
are certain cases like breaking out of for each loops, for example, where you return from a function, it returns a function, but really the thing that you want to return from is not the function scope, but the lexical scope. Sorry, that went really deep. I know
That was quick but very concise. I like it. I think if you were in cahoots, the two of you could probably manage.
I don't know. We've tried pretty hard.
Keep trying.
Thank you.
Thank you very much
Thank you,
for
Emma.
talking to us. If you're watching this on live stream or afterwards, thank you very much. This is the last talk of Nordic.js. Must be time to go to the pub.
Let's go
For
drink.
sure. Thank you.